All right, everybody. Welcome to the squat video that I promised that I was going to make. And if you're wondering right off the bat, why am I not in the gym? Where are the squats? Where are the recs? And where are the weights? Well, I'm not in the gym because today we're going to take a look at the inner workings of the squat. So we're going to take a look at the hips, the thighs, the joint, um, how we can move while we perform a squat and how we should move while we perform the squat. And I really want to help you deepening your understanding of what it is that's going on while you perform a squat. And this way you may find it easier to improve your squatting. Without further ado, let's get into it. To kick things off, we'll be looking at the structural dimensions of the upper body first. When we take a look at the sketch that I just laid out here, we will find that there is the pelvis, the spine, and the head. And really, the one thing that I marked down here is the socket of the hip joint where basically the thigh attaches. Okay, and what I want to point out here is that the upper body is actually longer than you might think it is. That's what I drew out here. It basically stretches from the last, from C7, so the last vertebrae of your cervical spine, all the way down to the sitting bones, right? To the sit bones, which are down here. And this basically is the full stretch of your upper body. And just keep in mind that whenever we squat or we perform a lower body motion, we always want to use the upper body as a unit, just to support the weight or to balance the weight. For it to be a unit, we have to take into consideration that it stretches from, again, the last cervical vertebrae all the way down to the sit bones here. Okay, so this is the full dimension. Bear that in mind for all the next sketches that we're going to go through. Sketch number 2 is going to be about the thigh bones, really, and it's just so we get a clearer understanding of what is going on. Here are both thigh bones basically sketched out, and what's illustrated further is actually the axis that is formed by the thigh bones, or more particularly by the heads of the thigh bones. And I really want to emphasize that both heads here, they actually form the axis around which your pelvis rotates when we go into hip flexion or extension. So the two heads insert into the pelvis, and this is the axis around which the pelvis rotates. And it's important to point out that is a rotation that's happening. Many times one says, or people say to somebody to push the hips back when you squat, for example. But pushing back is really not what is happening, because around this axis the pelvis has to rotate. Okay guys, so now we'll fuse the upper body and the thighs together to get a clearer picture of what is going on as we move into a squat. Okay. And first I want you to remember, and it's sort of drawn right here, I want you to remember the dimensions of the upper body. You can now clearly see that right here is our axis or our point of rotation. This is where the thighs insert sort of into the pelvis, all right? And you can actually see there's quite a bit of portion. There's a big portion, or there's a portion of the upper body which sits well below that axis, okay? And again, it's the axis of rotation. Now, as we descend into a squat, it's very important to keep in mind and to understand that the lower portion, this portion that's laid out here, has to rotate. It has to rotate back and up in order to enable us to stay upright in a squat and to actually load the hips, all right, and not the back. And you can see from the sort of the sequence from an upright position into a sort of 90-degree position and even a little deeper position, how much the angle has to change. So the rotational component of the lower portion has to increase the deeper we go. So the deeper we squat, the more we have to rotate the pelvis, the lower portion of the pelvis especially, back and up. All right, guys, and this concludes part 1 of the squat video. And what we've covered is, or what we've clarified is really how the pelvis rotates when you're going to hip flexion or extension. If you're wondering why I'm dressed differently and why it's gone dark outside, well, it's basically because it took me longer than expected to set up the whole video, and I really want to finish it. I wanted to finish it today. That's what I did. So don't mind the new clothing. There will be a second part to the whole squat video, and in the next part we're going to be covering rotational components, talking about internal and external rotation, how these two may be mistaken quite some time, and also in the next video we will be talking about coaching instructions, and especially why I think that the pushing the knees out instruction is actually a bad one and is not necessarily good to get people to squat better. Until then, I hope you practice what we've just discussed throughout the video, and I hope you find it helpful. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys for part 2.